You got to be able to see yourself somewhere before you physically get there. You want to transform your mind, your body, your business, you got to actually see it.
How long of a practice does that envisioning take?
You train and you train and you train. Think about it. You train 90% of the time and perform 10%. People want to be recognized as an expert before they are.
They're not doing the 90%. They're looking at the 10%. Welcome to Comfortable Conversations. I'm your host, Jas Kirk, where we dive into the greatest gift life can offer us, discomfort. These honest yet comfortable conversations we will have are essential as your life is your canvas. In each episode, I will share practical wisdom and personal stories that guide you through life's big questions, encouraging growth, self-discovery, and deeper connections in your everyday life. Today's guest we have is Michael Ledo, and if you guys are not familiar with him, he is a change maker, impactor, and influencer of the culture of sports. I say that so deeply because last year I was able to attend one of his events, which were for professionals and professional athletes specifically. And I walk in this room where this wealth of knowledge was being poured into these individuals to know you can go beyond the box that you're in. And so I'm in this room like, I can go beyond the box that I'm in. Granted, I know that about myself, but it was phenomenal to be amongst people that we look at as superstars and the icons and recognize how other individuals pour into those people. So, Michael, thank you for joining us today on Comfortable Conversations. How you doing?
I love it. I'm excited. I was honored to have you as a guest at our event last year. Now you're having me as a guest on the podcast. So I love the reciprocation.
Yeah. So I want to dive right in because this hour that we have, I really think you're about to like drop gems after gems after gems. Even when I speak to you, I got to have lunch with you and I was like taking all these notes.
I appreciate that.
So my first question is, only question, what discomfort led you to this version of yourself? There had to be something that made you say, let me pour into others and teach them a new way and take them along the journey.
Yeah, I love that question. I mean, and I love the way you design it on taking those discomforts that happen in our lives and really how do we transform it to something that's good. And I think for me, that definitely happened, right? So I'm originally from Indiana, and I'm a proud Texan now, 5 years strong. And but spent 37 years in Indiana and a lot of beautiful relationships, a lot of good moments, my family, all those different things. But ran into some, entrepreneurial challenges and barriers, I think, as a young black man, and had situations where was going through a divorce, going through a divorce, 2 kids, own my own business. Felt as if at times in the area that I was in, that I don't know how old I was at that time, but for a span of time, I was a young black dude with a lot of influence.
Okay.
And so maybe some deemed it power, I don't know. But there were just obstacles and challenges, And I was in situations where I had to choose to stand on what I believe in, like standing on what I value, what I believe in. I was telling one of my good friends the other day, I firmly believe that the truth needs no defense. So a lot of people feel as if when people talk about you, when people say things that may be false, it may not be the right narrative, I just kind of feel like either I can spend my time and my energy trying to defend myself, or I can continue to walk in the path that I'm supposed to be walking, and that will defend me.
Yeah.
Right?
A lie can't live. I always say a lie can't live. So why you don't really have to entertain it because it can't live. It's going to die where it's at.
I love that. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So it's like, in that sense, I choose to, be like, hey, let me just let my journey speak for itself.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, I just feel like that uncomfortable season of my life, I always say this, that year was 2018
Okay.
for me. And I always say I was born in 82, but I was made in 2018.
Okay.
That year made me who I am. The difficulties, the challenges, I think as I was in transition, I sold my home. I was waiting for my son to graduate high school. Otherwise, I would have moved to Dallas a lot sooner. Mm-hmm. So I sold the home. Instead of doing something else, I was going through a divorce. I was living on my mom's chair in her living room. I was sleeping on a chair in her living room for like 9 months, traveling back and forth doing that. So I think that discomfort, really in that season, birth.
Rise Family Office.
Yeah.
So one that is powerful and deep, because everybody thinks as you're on your journey, every single step you go up, 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 up. And it's really, I always say, you're not looking at the materialistic things, it's the inward work. Like I recently said to my mom, it's not that you fail, it's that you learn. You grow and you learn. You grow and you learn. Or you're like, that's not it. That's not it. Yes to this, no to that. And it's empowering to hear, like, 2018, just a few years ago, this is when it all started. And what is your background in?
Yeah. So I was an athlete my whole life. I was a running back, defensive back in football primarily. I played Division II football in college. I was a 2-time All-American, played in a couple national championships. And then I had a lot of amazing men in my life that were very influential.
Yeah.
My grandfather, my uncle, my dad, my other uncle. But one of my uncles was the first black sports agent, Eugene Parker. And I grew up around Deion Sanders and Rod Woodson, Emmitt Smith. You had 7 Hall of Famers. And so I was in close proximity, not only to him, but to other men as well.
Yeah.
But I was in close proximity to excellence.
Yeah, excellence breeds excellence.
Right. And I was able to see possibility. My uncle had a pool in his house and an elevator and everything else. And so I was like, yo, it's within reach. I can see it. And he gave me a lot of books to read and things. And I was always a student. Like, one of my uncles, my Uncle Virgil, really put me on to reading early. And he was my spiritual mentor. And so I just feel like, that's my background as far as being from Indiana, athlete. I started my first company in college.
Okay.
So I started a company where I developed athletes physically, mentally, and spiritually. I did that for 15 years. I ended up selling it to a private equity firm / family office. It was a single family office that had a private equity firm component to them.
So as you're sharing this, did you have experience? You started your own business in college, but did you have experience? Like, your uncles are giving you exposure to this.
Yeah.
You're gaining knowledge by reading more books, all of that.
I had no experience.
Okay.
No experience. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what a profit margin was. I was really, I think people back home thought I was this millionaire already and stuff because my influence gave that off.
Yeah.
But it was this thing of where, I didn't know, man. I was just I was a leader. I was learning. I could influence and lead people. I could market. I could sell vision. But I didn't know how to run business, operations, profit and loss, balance statements, leadership. I just didn't know. Yeah. So I learned by osmosis on the fly and by making a hell of a lot of mistakes, So, yeah, that was pretty it. And then, so I ended up, like I said, sold that company. And when I got exposed to mergers, acquisitions, business development, strategy, it was like, yo, I love this. I'm good at this.
But did you see people? So how old were you when you sold the business?
Well, I sold majority stake of it. I probably was, 18. I was probably in my early 30s,
Okay.
early mid 30s. I'm guessing.
And you had started it in college, though.
Mm-hmm.
So when it got to those years, you were gaining all of this knowledge, new knowledge and information.
Mm-hmm.
Did that when you transitioned out of college? Like, what was that like? Because you were a D2 athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So did you know in college, like, this is what I'm going to do after?
No, I didn't know. Well, what happened was, my dad and I went on a trip in New Orleans, and we went to go train. My uncle, the agent, sent us to go train with a guy named Tom Shaw, who was the #1 speed coach in the world at that time.
Okay.
And when I went to go train with Tom, God kind of gave me vision, like, yo, I'd never been exposed from Indiana to this kind of training.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can do this in ministry. I could use it as a ministry. So I called one of my childhood friends that was in getting his doctorate in physical therapy. He was always a big weight room guy. And so I hit him up and was like, yo, let's start this. Let's do this. And so it kind of got birthed when I went on that trip with my dad a little bit. And I went back and started it then.
So the birth, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs, that nudge comes, but the first thing you hear is, I need money.
Yeah.
How did you know to trust the nudge? Is that faith?
Yeah, it was completely faith for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a real spiritual person, I believe. You know, but I felt led by God. I think it was a nudge of faith. And, you know, it's tough because as I express my own journey and I articulate this to you, I'm a strategist and a consultant by heart. So for me, when someone says, well, what do you need to start a business? I wouldn't say money. I would say a strategy.
Yeah.
Right? Like a plan. Most entrepreneurs don't have that. But let's just be real. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
You know, I just stepped out. But I think if I would have had a me helping me back then, I would have got a lot profitable a lot sooner. I would have scaled a lot sooner. I would have just done a lot. But I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. When I first started out, I always thought, like, in order to start something, you needed money. And then the more I tried and failed and just met and was honest where I was and met people like yourself, I had to learn, like, okay, if you think that's what you need, what about if you work on all the other stuff in the meantime and it'll come? And then I started to realize, like, you have so much work that actually needs to get done, because if the money were to come today, you really wouldn't be ready for it. And so when I started to learn that, I was like, it's not money, it's discipline. It's not money, it's your priorities. It's not money, it's strategy. It's not. Well,
when you're hitting something on the head, because when you've been, it's a I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but it's like, I went from seeking access to being the access. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when you've been on both sides of the spectrum and the side of the table, now it's like people seeking capital, asking for money. I understand what it's like to be on the side seeking it.
Yeah.
And I understand what the deploying it. And so it humbles you and you can see things from multiple angles. You know?
Yeah. I love that. We gonna use that. We saving that.
Silly.
But so as you've sold this company, you've gained a gang of knowledge and information, like I said, and then we get back to 2018, where you are living on your mom's couch. You have kids. You're in this transition period. I also love that you said transition. It wasn't until recently that a bunch of people said that to me, and I was like, it really does shift your mindset of like, oh, I'm failing or anything negative, and just knowing like you're no longer where you were and you're not yet where you're going to be, but in that in between, it's still okay. So what really got you through that? Once again, I know your faith was important and you're stepping out. There's a nudge happening for Rise Family Office. But what really was the thing that held you together to keep stepping and have powerful steps, right? Because I feel like if you have this moment of this seemingly take 2 steps back to take powerful steps forward, it can be discouraging.
Well, I like to say I've always said this, and I think it's a quote from a professor from Stanford on how he describes what entrepreneurship is. But I always say that entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity, regardless of resources currently controlled. So it's like entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity, regardless of resources in your life that are currently controlled.
Oh, wow.
So for me, when I went through that, it was my vision that God had given me. You gotta be able to see yourself somewhere before you physically get there.
Yes.
Right? You want to transform your mind. You want to transform your body. You want to transform your business. You got to actually see it. So for me, that season of sleeping on my mom's, chair in the house, and I was physically there, but my mind and my spirit was in Dallas.
Okay.
I was here. I was already here. And so in that, I wasn't looking at my current situation. I was believing who God was telling me who I am.
Yeah.
So now that I'm on podcasts, now last week I just spoke with Justin Fields and Alante Taylor. Yeah. I might be speaking at a big conference coming up, all this stuff. I already saw it. I already believed it. You know what I'm saying? But I just walked it out.
Yeah. I love that. You got to just walk it out. And I really want to ask, how long of a practice does that envisioning take? Because people sit down and with mindfulness or meditation or life visioning, and they're like, it's not working immediately, or they really can't see themselves past their limiting beliefs that they don't even know they have.
Yeah, I think it's the when you were saying earlier about it's not about the money, because if you get the money and you don't have the discipline or the plan on how to execute the money, it's all for nothing.
Yeah.
You got to think about it like being an athlete, right? Like you train and you train and you train. Think about it. You train 90% of the time and perform 10%.
Yeah.
All of it's just preparation. It's preparation for this moment, for this game, for this performance. And we live in this world where everybody just wants to play in the game, but they don't want to train. They don't want to prepare.
They're not doing the 90%. They're looking at the 10%. Like you're looking at attention versus all the intention that goes in there.
Man, come on. So at the end of the day, for me, when I was going through that season, I said, especially in today's social media era and different things, it's like, and I say this often, many people have heard me say this, but like, I firmly believe that people want to be recognized as an expert before they are. Mm-hmm. And I want to be one way before I was recognized as one.
Yeah.
I feel like God has been developing me and preparing me from being an athlete, to training athletes, to being a serial entrepreneur, to being a coach, to being a mentor, to now learning, investing in business development and strategy, to be the best in the country at what I do today. And all those stages of my life and all those things have equipped me to walk out the assignment that I believe has been given to me.
So what would you say to people who want to be the expert ahead of their time, like ahead of really being that? Like if you say tomorrow I want to be a consultant, like most people are like, I said, it's that envisioning that comes in like, well, I envision myself as that. What is the difference between, okay, yes, you need to envision, but then all that work that takes time? Because I feel like you don't see people giving themselves time, and they're not putting I always say your 10,000 hours in.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people that lack the patience of their development to master something, right?
Yeah.
I love listening to Myron Golden.
Okay.
And Myron likes to say that he doesn't like the education system. And he says the education system teaches us to learn things, but not master anything.
Yeah.
Anything you want to do, you want to master it in life, right? I feel like a lot of people want to play football or they want to play pro sport because they want the money and the girls and the means to an end.
Yeah.
It ain't really to be the best.
Yeah.
It's just, you want what come with it, right? Sometimes I see I don't mean to throw no shade when I say this, but I'm gonna be transparent. You know, you can see girls or women, I'm sorry, that'll say they social media branding people, right? But all they do is brand themselves on social media. And it's like, are you really focused on
what you say you are
to be an expert at that for other people? Or is it just to fulfill something for yourself?
But you're really good at it for yourself. I used to cringe when people would call me an influencer because I was like, no, I'm not. And they're like, well, Jas, my one friend was like, you influence people, Jas, not necessarily on social media, but like outside.
Might not have been your intent.
Yeah.
That might not have been your intent, but that might have been the natural transformation.
Yeah. So it took a really long time for me to like hold that one because I had judgment about that because I was like, I'm not a person who is big on attention. And if I sit with and reflect a lot. So I'm like, what am I doing this for? Is it attention or what intention is lying under here? And that sustains me doing anything that I do to remain consistent. Because if it's attention, I'm like, this is short fuse, short lived, short everything.
I like how when you said earlier that what'd you say, a lie can't live?
Yeah, a lie can't live.
Yeah, I feel like when you don't walk in your authentic DNA or your calling, it really doesn't live long.
You become exposed, and it's really an internal exposure that starts at first because you feel like a fraud. That's when people are like, they're battling that fraud feeling, but they don't know what it is. And it's because something within is not really there. And then what you're radiating outwardly is like, there's friction and tension and restriction. And you're like, but I'm great. That's why when you hear people like, I'm fine. I'm very honest of how I'm doing with things because I had those years of like, part of you feels like a fraud. A part of you feels like this, but it was because, especially in starting a business, I was like, everything is amazing. Oh my gosh. And then I was like, but you're not making any money. Right. Why didn't anybody tell you this is how it's supposed to be? But it really wasn't how it was supposed to be. There was work that I needed to do. Mm-hmm. And when I started being more accountable with myself and honest, mm-hmm. I realized there was a day that came that I felt like I took all the clothes off and was just bare and naked saying, this is where I am. I need help. I don't have a business degree. I took a passion. I took mm-hmm. something that happened to me, mm-hmm. and I'm willing to step. And that's when God, all the resources, everything, the rooms, like organically things started to happen. And I was like, I'm no longer doing the fake mask.
Right.
I can't do it ever again. And I learned sharing your story and your truth really is the connection to people and community in a way that's more than saying, I started like 2018, if you're saying like, I just came out with Rise Family Office and it just blossomed. And they're like, that's not how it really happened for me.
Nah, man. I had a small circle of people who believed in me and supported me, and I focused on them instead of the ones that didn't. And, I had a client in Jalen Smith who believed in me and gave me an opportunity. And then, Jesse Bates, and now 12 clients later and managing over $200 million in assets under advisement and 5 different businesses and continually developing my craft along with an amazing team to be the best in the country at what we do, in a niche market.
So let's get to that niche market. You are essentially sharing with athletes, go beyond this game. Take us through that. Tell us why. When I attended the symposium that you guys hosted, mm-hmm. I remember there was a stat of, I think it's 60% of professional athletes go bankrupt after their first 3 years.
Yeah, it might be 78.
It was high that I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
if you get close to it, it wouldn't surprise you. I used to be like that when I was, not in it from afar.
yeah,
And I was in a situation like you, and you look at it and you're like, really? And then as you get closer and you see the behaviors,
yeah,
right? It's like if you hear a statistic, right, on people getting shot, right?
yeah.
And then you're like, that many people get killed in a neighborhood? And then you go to the hood
You're like,
and you see it, and you're like,
understand.
oh, okay, this is why everybody getting shot. Like you go into the hood, you go into the environment a little bit and you see the activity, you see the way they think, you see the movement, you see the culture. It'll make sense why the outcome. That's why one of the things that we say at Rise, and one of us said, we're going to elevate the culture.
Yeah, and that's what you're doing. Like you said, 78%, we're about to change this.
Yeah.
But we have to educate you first.
Yeah, man, we got to elevate the culture. We gotta let them know that no, we gotta raise the standard. I remember when I first started, I had a whole bunch of agents and different people that I knew when I came into the industry. Said, man, athletes don't need all that.
Really?
They don't need all that. They don't need it. That's what they was telling me, and it motivated the hell out of me because it was like, yo, why y'all? Why is the bar so low? Like, why are we saying that they can't learn more? Because we want them to be like dependent upon people. We don't want them to be empowered. We don't want them to understand. Like, we can only do so much, right? When you go to a school and a kid go to a school and learn, right? Where's your first school at? Where's your first school? Where was your first school, you think?
Oh, you're talking about grade school?
No,
like
just education.
I feel stumped right now.
Okay, it's your home.
Okay.
Your first school is your home.
Gonna be like,
yeah, your mom gonna be mad. But your first school is your home. Whether if it was good education or bad education, your siblings, your mom, your dad, your uncle, that's your first education. And no matter how well a school is, you got to go back home.
Yeah.
Man, I can provide all the educational stuff I want. I can mentor, I can do sessions, I can do whatever. But I'm trying to build up young brothers to lead their wives, lead their children, lead their families so they can lead. The same way they got to lead on that field, but they can't lead in a language they can't even speak.
Yeah.
I don't even understand how to speak what an EBITDA is and what a CapEx is and what equities is and what alternative investments are and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of the time when we grew up just playing sports or whatever our culture was we grew up in, we intimidated by this business stuff.
Yeah.
We feel like it's for everybody but us.
Yeah, and it's for us.
It's for us. And so, and a lot of the time, when you do business, you feel like you can't do business with someone that look like me or look like them.
Yeah.
You got to be someone of a different, because the way we've been taught is because us don't have the knowledge or the experience, which in some cases that's true, but that is changing.
Yeah, it's drastically changing.
Yeah.
And I love that you're doing that. I love that you said home is the first school, because it really does start at home, what we're doing, and then everything else is outward from there. Mm-hmm. And the tools and the resources, and that's that private time that you have. And also when you talk about leading, I always say this, a lot of men dating, people say they lead, a man says, oh, I can lead, but what does leading really mean to you? And I feel like when you shared about like teaching them to lead, you really talked about the family foundation, your wife, your kids, and that's a faith-based aspect to that, because that's something like last week I was in church and they're like, women's needs, men's needs, and women's needs are to be led when you're looking at it from the Bible's standpoint. And so you're teaching that, but you're also educating them on how to be it.
Yeah, and it's difficult because now I ain't perfect.
Right.
I ain't perfect in them areas. I've been divorced.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things I do, whether if it's with my children, with the athletes, whoever, I don't try to hide from my mistakes. Yeah. And I try to be transparent about the mistakes I've made, what I've learned from that experience and wisdom that I've gained, right? Because wisdom comes from experience. Yeah. Whether that experience is good or bad. Yeah. And so, but we do try to develop that. The culture of the athlete, the entertainer, is very destructive. I believe And there's a balance between being having grace and having empathy towards people and not being judgmental of what they're going to go through and what they're going to do. At the same time, holding people accountable, but compassionately holding them accountable to what it is. When I talk to them and I say, what do you want? What do you want to do for your family? How do we want to make this last? Because most athletes, when they get this money, it's just a really long, fun, lavish vacation.
But do you also see a lot of them deal with like they've come into fast money and everybody is like latching on for dear life, need. I mean, that's what you see on the TV shows.
Yeah, that definitely happens. But I think what happens more, I think that, Jay-Z said this, that fame is a drug. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you get tapping into that dopamine.
Yeah, that hit,
right? It don't always have to be a drug.
Yeah.
It can be the drug. It can be a woman. It could be people giving you a whole bunch of attention. It can be that feeling when you walk in the club and you in the section and you walk in there. It's just, what is feeding you?
Yeah.
What is feeding your spirit? And to think that you can just cut that off
at any time.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be a spiritual intervention, or you just develop some kind of discipline or whatever it is. Like I deal with it. I've experienced it. I've seen it. And I think it's a very difficult thing for the young brothers. I haven't started working with a lot of these female athletes yet. I look forward to working with the sisters. They now just starting to make enough money to kind of work with us as a family office.
Not they just now. Yeah. How much money people got to make to work with you?
Well, I would say I wouldn't want someone to pay us, right? Or if we can't put money to work.
Okay.
So if you only making $200,000 a year playing basketball, gross before taxes, it's not a whole lot left for us to invest to start to do. So now that that's starting to happen, now we can really put some true money to work and we can build some real wealth.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's powerful to know. Like, you do have thresholds just based on what you can help the athlete do more with their money.
Yeah.
So if someone does want to your mentorship and all of that, are there programs you have within Rise Family?
No, not really. We're focused on what we're focused on. Like, we're focused on building successful family offices, educating the family, consulting them on businesses, for-profit and nonprofit, governing all their finances, right? So everything they have in the equities, everything they have in alternative investments, everything they have from trust and estate, just really we're their off-the-field executive team, right? And so in that, we focus on that. We only have about 10 or 12 team members. We're a small family office. We'll probably be somewhere between 15, 20 team members when it's all said and done. So we really got to focus our attention. Now, I'm speaking more and going out, and some of our team members, my VP of investments, Jay Bass, he does educational stuff. I do it. So we go out and we do that, but not like formal programs. We are starting to work with NIL athletes more at a younger age because of the money that's coming to them at a much faster pace.
So 2 questions. One, I want to touch back on female athletes. There's a huge shift happening in the culture.
Yeah.
So are you excited about having?
I am. I think women in a lot of cases are better students and more teachable.
Okay.
In that sense, the brothers can be, challenging, ego can be present, a lot more at times. So I look forward to it. And I think that women in entrepreneurship and now in leadership, it's like when I moved to Dallas, I never seen so many women in like this entrepreneurial movement and where I was from. Like it's pretty dope to see. So I think that it's a lot of women showing like that women power and when you can do it. So I think as the female athlete begins to be compensated more appropriately, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. And you also, my second question that you touched on was the mindset when you actually start working with the athlete. Like, is there a huge mindset shift that needs to take place? Like, what is the first thing that you're like, you have to do this and trust me? Like, I think that was the biggest thing is like, how do you get them to trust you?
Yeah.
That you're about to help them even more.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's so good because myself or my team could be the most knowledgeable people in the world, but if you don't trust me, it doesn't matter, right? And everybody comes from different walks of lives, different challenges, different traumas. And so for me, I'm real direct. I try to be relatable and adaptable to whoever the person may be and try to meet them where they're at, right? And I always say, like, you'll always find a man's motive after time. You know, time will always show a man's motive.
Yeah.
And so when you want a speed date, you're going to get speed results. You know, when you want to, do whatever, but take the time to know.
Yeah.
And so with my clients, I try to show them over time that we under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's the way they feel. But we're going to build that over time. But it really comes down through, Jasmine, is what it comes down to: education.
Yeah.
Right? Helping them understand things on what's the why behind things.
Yeah. So you're empowering them in the process.
And you got to, man.
Yeah.
You got to. You gotta, but borrowed beliefs have no power, right? So, you really gotta be at a point where it's like, okay, you can borrow my beliefs for a little bit. You can trust me. That's cool. But I got to instill this. I got to impart this. I got to put this into you so that you can now. I was talking to one of my clients yesterday I love dearly. And he had told me, he said, Mike, you sowed a seed in me in 2014 that has now blossomed. And I said, now you're sowing seed.
I love that.
Into other people, right? And so that's the ultimate goal.
You drop like gym after gym after gym that I'm like, golly, we need to be taking notes. But if there's anything that you could share with your younger self or a younger kid out there, what is it that you needed to hear?
Man, I know that's like a basic question, but that's so heavy. Oh, man, bro. Oof. What would I tell my younger self? I think that the space that you walk in is very, very important. I think the space that you walk in is very, very important. I think, you hear a lot of people that underestimate, in my opinion, environment.
Yeah.
Environment. I'm a big vibration guy. I'm a big energy guy. If the energy off and the vibration off, I'm the other direction.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we try to force things to work. We try to force people to be in alignment. You don't need a lot of people to be in alignment with you. You just need a couple of solid folks that are in alignment, and you got God, and you go, do that. I've never really been a big person on this, but like, don't be seeking out here seeking validation.
Yeah.
And that thing and all that stuff. So I would just say, man, my circle, find the people that align with you and have a similar vision. I've been blessed. I say this all the time. I have the best friend in the world.
Yeah.
And we are total opposite.
Really?
Yeah, we're total opposite. Because
y'all are still in alignment.
Yeah. And we were talking about this last night, actually, that it's hard for people when they see our relationship, that if someone sees my behavior or sees his behavior, they associate it with the other person.
Yeah.
But we opposite.
Yeah.
But it's because we accept the difference. And the difference balances us.
Okay.
And so it's opened me up to being less judgmental.
Yeah.
Things I would never do because I can see it through his lens.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing on other aspects is happening with me.
Yeah.
And so I think find those kind of people in your life.
So space in general, the spaces you occupy really do matter. It wasn't until I began my journey in business that I learned that. Had you told me 2017, spaces mattered to me, but it was just like luxury. It's supposed to be good lighting, good material, all of that. But it wasn't until I started to go on a journey of entrepreneurship that I started to see things differently and see people differently. And I never started to, I felt out of place when I would be in spaces. And then some friendships died and I didn't understand what was happening. And I remember a friend of mine was like, you always used to tell me everything. And I said to her, well, my table only had, I took away all the chairs and it's me and God because I got to see something different. Like I was in some spaces and I was like, what's going on? And it wasn't until I took away all the chairs, I took away the needing others to validate me, because that's what those chairs were for. It was like, okay, I need you to validate this part, this part, this part. And I took all of those away. And then I started to see differently. And now the people that I have in my life and the environment I'm around, everybody pours into each other's cups that when I'm around them, I feel so filled. And before I would be so depleted, like somebody took a straw and I'm like, I'm seeping on sides. Like, why every time I'm around, I'm depleted and you're so drained. So when you talk about environment, I think it's hands down, like the spaces we occupy really do matter. And if you feel off, that's that discomfort people are unwilling to sit in, like something's off. Let me sit in it to really recognize what it is versus project or judge so you can see what it is and then move forward. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you on that. Like the spaces, and I think sometimes, depending on certain seasons of life, we got to be willing to walk alone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's like necessary, I'm not saying permanently.
Yeah.
But through certain seasons, one of my favorite movies is The Book of Eli.
Yeah.
With Denzel Washington. And I just love, I've been saying this for a long time since that movie was out. I'm just walking west. I'm just walking west. And they're like, yo, where you going? He was blind. He was a warrior. He had that book. He was going to get it there. Yeah. God don't give you all the answers. He don't give you the full thing. He just give you an assignment and a direction. And so I think sometimes we got to walk alone. Sometimes we might have 3 or 4 people walking with us. We might have 10. But whenever I see people that have a lot of people walking with them, I'm like, yo, you're going to get confused on your direction. You know what I mean? But
everybody trying to give you directions, Google Maps. Like you just need one.
To each his own. But I'm cool. I'm going to ride with just a few,
Is there anything you haven't shared with the people here today that you want to leave a little nugget with?
Nah, I mean, I just think that having the conversations like this with you, those uncomfortable conversations, and really just self-discovery, vulnerability. I do believe that vulnerability is a superpower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so really putting you in spaces where you can have these kind of safe conversations and self-discovery only just makes you, stronger.
Well, y'all have it there. Vulnerability, self-discovery, get curious, ask questions, and keep stepping. That's Comfortable Conversations with Mike Ledo. Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining me, Jas Kirk, on Comfortable Conversations. Remember, the greatest gift life can offer you is discomfort. It's what shapes us, teaches us, and helps us grow. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. Until next time, keep embracing life's challenges as opportunities to create your masterpiece. Your canvas is waiting. Go paint it beautifully.